Hey everyone, it's Tom Seymour from VHS Massacre. Happy 2024. I figured I'd do a video to start out the new year. So just to get right into it, I'm going to talk about no-budget filmmaking. For once, I'm sure you've noticed that the mainstream Hollywood films, the studio films, have all been bombing pretty much the whole year. There's a few films that eked out a profit, like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and a few other ones, obviously Barbie and Oppenheimer, but for the most part, it's been mostly studio system and free fall, or if not collapsing. The one of the things is the type of media consolidation that has happened. Basically, the studio system is kind of done. If you really research every existing quote-unquote studio that either been bought by Silicon Valley or absorbed by a cable or television company, and so really there's no real studio system left. It's pretty much tech companies. I think Amazon just bought MGM, for example. The level of storytelling in some of the modern streaming sites is pretty bad, and so as independent and no budget filmmakers, I can see a little light at the end of the tunnel, because I do think that people are tired of these. It's so strange, because the storytelling is among the worst we've had in the past few decades. Yet they will sort of polish that turd. They'll put CGI in every scene, and so what hopefully that means is that people are actually looking for films, possibly made by real people, meaning that they're not part of a huge system, that maybe they were actually auteurs, a single director working with a very small budget. So I make no budget features. I've produced about 20. I've personally directed about 10 feature-length films, 10, working on an 11th. And when we talk about no budget, we're really talking about films under 20 grand. I know that some people push the concept of no budget higher, like 40 or something like that, but I just don't think that's honest. So when you're talking about no budget films, I think it's under 20 grand. We have to talk in terms of used car prices when we're talking about no budgets. So I will turn it to the audience and ask everyone out there, do you have a favorite no budget film? A film that costs next to nothing. Some examples, this is where it gets murky. So El Mariachi was shot for about $7,000. They poured $250,000 into it in post. So the movie that we saw was $250,000, more like $260,000 with inflation. That's like a $500,000 film. That same thing is true about Clerks, $500,000 film. The only one that I could find, the same thing with Slacker, which was Richard Linklater's first film. The only thing I find was at the film Primer. Primer, I think, was actually a no-budget film. But those are all films that were sort of touted by the studio system. They signed deals with these large studios. A lot of people talking about Miramax, which was owned by Disney. So it's a lot of it was genuinely shot independent films being absorbed by the studio system, polished, and then put out as if they were no budget. So it was an interesting conundrum. But I grew up watching a lot of direct-to-video stuff by labels like you could find in a video store, like Maverick and Asylum. You could find stuff by SRS, by Troma, by Full Moon. So I guess my question to the audience is, what are some no-budget films that you enjoy, and are they really no budget? So that's the other thing. That's the thing I'm pushing right now. you know. And some of the older stuff is fascinating. If you could find old films actually shot on VHS and released on VHS, I know, like, I think Sledgehammer was done that way. So that's interesting too. So to wrap up what last year was about, the VHS Massacre docs, which is what I'm known for at this point. Those are 2 feature-length docs that talk about. The first one was the decline of physical media and the video store era. And it's very poignant now because people are finally starting to realizing that they need their physical media back because the streaming companies are so greedy and their favorite movies keep getting moved and rotated out of certain streaming sites. The second one concentrated on exploitation film and the importance of it and how it's like a canary in the coal mine for how healthy the art community is in a country, because a lot of the stuff is like crass and gory. And if it's starting to be pushed out of the streaming sites, then you know that the level of censorship is getting to be a little too much. So that's VHS Massacre 2. They had a good run. I think collectively over 30 awards. We streamed on Shudder's Mid Massacre. We did a whole discussion board with Joe Bob Briggs and Lloyd and Debbie Rochon, who was in the films. And the last big thing that happened was in the summer, the New York Times gave a pretty glowing review of those 2 docs. And the reason why that's important is because these films were made for $500. They were made for nothing. They're feature-length documentaries, and there's no motivation for the New York Times to talk about them. Trauma put them out. There's no... So anyway, that was a big deal for me because it wasn't, like I said, there's really no reason the New York Times should be promoting or talking about a $500 film. So to me, that was sort of a brass ring. But that pretty much closed out the 2 films. I mean, people still watch them, but I would say a lot of the hype has died down a bit. And that's okay, it was a good run. And so a few different things I'm working on personally. The hardcover book for I made this horror thriller. It's a book in screenplay format with illustrations. So that's out on Amazon. You could get that. The Kindle version is $4.99. But there's a hardcover version, so it's really nice actually. And the thing is, if let's say you're a filmmaker and you're writing a screenplay, I wrote the screenplay and then I entered it in several contests. I think maybe about 20 contests, and I won. I think I have 8 awards, so it did pretty well. So you can do it. Anyone can do it. Anyone can make a no-budget film. Anyone can write their own screenplay, and there's no reason not to do it. It's almost free. Everyone knows someone who's got a DSLR, mirrorless camera, a Blackmagic camera. You can borrow. You could plan out. I like the 11-day shoot. If you want to know more about filmmaking, watch on YouTube on my channel, VHS Massacre. There's a whole series on the $500 feature, it's called. And starts from making a doc for next to nothing, making a $6,000 horror film, making a $12,000 action film, and up through different genres. So one of the things I did this year was I judged the Telly Awards. I love the Telly Awards. I think they're look, we've all seen what has happened to the Academy Awards and how it's just become. When you look at Hollywood films, when you look at that Los Angeles culture, it doesn't necessarily give you good vibes, and you kind of realize that the successful actor or filmmaker in Hollywood doesn't really have a lot in common with someone like you or I. And so that's another reason to really look to no-budget films, look to no-budget horror and stuff like that, go to horror conventions and stuff like that, or horror and sci-fi, to just look for films that are made by lower and middle-class people and to see what they're up to. But the Telly Awards was started to kind of compete with the local Emmy, the regional Emmy. but they dealt more with small market stuff, from public television to branded content like commercial campaigns to documentaries to films. And now they branched out online as well. And so the Tellys is an important national awards competition, but you and I can enter the Tellys. We can't really enter the Emmys, although I would say the things have flipped. I know I started out my career in local news, and I know people still working in local news. And when they win a regional Emmy, you could win it for various things, but that is actually meaningful, because that those are small teams and they do a lot of work there. So I think a regional Emmy has meaning, and then a Telly Award has meaning. But the thing that's interesting is people used to make fun of local news a little bit, even if it was like CBS or NBC or whatever, because they respected national news more. I think that has totally reversed. If you look at New York, like New York One, or even in Connecticut, it was CBS News or whatever. Covering local events is necessary. So if it was like a fire or like a flood, you want to know what's going on with the city and state government, or your city in general. The weather. These are very practical, necessary things for your area. And I think that actually turns out to be more important than a lot of the other stuff that's happened in national news and cable news, where so much of it is opinion-based. So I still do think the regional Emmy is actually more respectable than the national Emmy. And then also, Golden Globes and the Academy Awards, I think those are totally compromised with the influence of money. I mean, the Academy Awards was started as an agreement between the studios and the theater to boost the profile of art films and other films. That's what it was. It was always about money, and same thing with the Golden Globes. And most award competitions are about money. You could accuse some award shows of that, but something like the Tellys, they are respected, and at least you and I can enter, It's not some weird closed-off competition, So I judged the Tellys this year, and I had a ball doing it, and some really good films this year. I got to judge films about NASA, large national companies. And the cool thing about Tellys is someone like me might enter it with a film if I had a film I wanted to try to enter. Also, HBO would enter, or Netflix might enter it, or NPR, CBS, NBC, all these, national companies. So it can be a big deal. On a closing note, again, let me know in the comments some of your favorite no-budget films. Maybe you watch something late one night on some horror streaming platform, some weird movie about a killer sofa, or I'd like to get a collection of those kind of movies and hear about them. Yeah, buy physical media, support no-budget filmmaking, because those films are made by lower and middle-class people. Keep the indie spirit alive, and happy 2024. All right, take care. Bye.